So if you suspect your neighbor's a striga making your children sick, and you do that, and they're able to walk over the threshold, then they're not the striga in question. Another way...
now have an idea for what I'm going to do this Easter Sunday.
Just in case you didn't know, I'm Brian.
And I'm Matthew.
And this is Road Trip Recap.
Spoilers up ahead, as today we talk about the Something Wicked episode of Supernatural.
We are also going to be taking a look at strigas and what strigas are.
All right, buckle up and let's go. Our episode today starts in Fitchburg, Wisconsin. As we get this young girl, she's getting ready for bed and everything, and we learn through exposition. I know words. we learn that her sister's in the hospital, and so she's wondering if her mom's going to come home, but she's staying with her sister and everything. She gets tucked in, and then we get some more forest shadowing going on as there's a tree that's just being all creepy and
they do enjoy their forest shadowing.
And then we get like a tree-like hand coming in and opening the window and just being all creepy and attacking the girl. That's kind of the start of our episode here. We then cut to Sam and Dean. They're heading into town. We find out that they were given more coordinates from John, and he's telling them to head to this location, but like Sam's looking into it and like nothing is popping up as like out of the ordinary, whatever. Yeah. So they go into town, they start checking around, and like there's some shifty looking individuals from like people that are just like paranoid or whatever, but nothing really out of the ordinary.
I mean, they can almost count as a shifty individual.
But then Sam gets suspicious because kids aren't playing on the playground.
Yeah.
And it's, after school, whatever, so I'm just kind of like, okay, well, maybe there is something, let's investigate. So Dean goes over, and there is, like, a mom there, and, her kids playing on the playground, just trying to find out what's going on. He finds out that a bunch of kids have been getting sick. And so parents are kind of worried, and so that's why, there's not a lot of kids around. Parents are kind of trying to keep them indoors and keep them from catching whatever's going around. The mother that Dean talks to, we've actually seen before, as she was played by Erica Carroll, which was the nurse in our Faith episode.
Oh. And
later becomes the angel Hannah, which we have headcanonized.
Yeah. And we can add that to the headcanon that after the Faith episode, moved to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, just
accepted. Yeah.
Saw how all these kids were miraculously getting better later, and then
spoilers up ahead.
Got into some faith, and then was able to be a vessel, I guess.
Yep.
So since they find out these kids are getting sick, they go to check out the hospital, and we get a humorous interaction as they're heading in, and Sam's like, I'm not using this ID. And why? Because it says Bikini Inspector on it. He's like, you just gotta have like confidence, whatever. They're not even gonna ask, just go. And so Sam says that he's with the CDC and whatever, and can I see some ID? And like Dean's kind of like chuckling because he has got. So Sam just kind of like flashes it and then puts it back. Can you just lead me to the pediatrics ward? And she tells him where to go, and then turns and kind of glares at Dean because he had to show the ID that said Bikini Inspector, and even though he got away with it, I'm not happy about that.
Not thrilled.
Anyways, they go into the pediatrics ward and they talk with Dr. Heidecker, as he's kind of giving them the lowdown on what's going on with these kids. They have like pneumonia, they're all comatose, and they're just kind of, their immune system's failing, and like the doctors don't know what's going on. One thing that I saw while I was looking stuff up for this is Heidecker has like there's a story of a Heidecker that went in search of like the Fountain of Youth, and so that's kind of a nod to like, hey, this guy's been around for a while.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't age, which spoilers for the spoiler for later.
For the spoilery part. Yeah.
Also, Dr. Heidecker was played by Adrian Hugh, I believe. I may be saying his last name wrong, but we see him come back later as I think it's Victor Rogers in season 8. He's the guy that like has the kids going out hunting for him.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's the same guy.
Victor.
Anyways.
Not a great guy, Victor.
No, he was not. Not a great doctor either.
No, he is not.
So we can't really headcanon them being the same person.
Mm-mm.
But I mean, the characteristics are. I mean, it's not a great
wolf in sheep's clothing kind of a thing.
Yeah. Also, before they go and talk to the doctor, Dean sees this elderly patient that's just kind of sitting in a room with an upside down cross and everything. And that elderly patient was played by Mary Black, who comes back in season 3, the fairy tale episode. She's the grandma that gets attacked by the wolf, I believe. So
she looks much nicer than she does in this episode.
But still a great character in this episode.
Also, yes.
They talked to one of the parents of one of the kids that just came in, trying to get some information. Don't really know what's going on. Like maybe the window was left open the one night. It was definitely open the second night. And Sam's just kind of like, well, I know one thing. He's probably not going to be home for a while. So they go and break into the guy's home.
There you go.
They're looking for clues, and they find a handprint on the windowsill. It's just like, oh, something was here. It's not just pneumonia. And then we get like a flashback from Dean, and so he knows what they're dealing with. And Sam's just like, what's going on? Like, I feel like there's more to this. Like, tell me. And Dean's like, nope, that's it.
No, I'm good.
And so they go to a motel, and they go to get a room, and there's a kid there that's helping them out, and asks, king or 2 queens? And he's like, oh, 2 queens. And, yeah, I bet. What was that? Oh, nothing. So it's at this point, the kid's mom comes out, Joanna, and she starts dealing with Dean. Anyways, Joanna was played by a Venus Terzo, who comes back later as
Said that
Sonia.
With confidence.
Supreme confidence. Anyways, it comes back later as Sonia in season 11. It's a Valentine's episode, I believe, where people get kissed and then die. And honestly, I don't remember this episode at all. Maybe like when I go to find like where she shows up in that episode, I'll see it and be like, oh yeah, now I remember. But in this moment,
having not rewatched that one recently,
I have no idea what this episode is about. But Joanna comes back 10 years later, 11 years later, whatever. Michael, the kid that was making fun of Dean, he goes off and he's helping his little brother, whatever. So we get another flashback of Dean helping his little brother.
Yeah.
So just kind of remembering back when he was kids, back when they were kids, at the Roosevelt Asylum.
At the Roosevelt.
I'm never gonna let myself live that down.
I'm glad.
So after this, we get a little bit more of some background on what it is that they're fighting, and Sam's still kind of like,
what's going on?
Why do you know about these things? And I like, there's more to this, but Dean knows because Sam, in his research, basically reveals that the Striga are invulnerable. Like, you can't hurt them.
Yeah.
He's like, no, that's not true. You can kill it when it's feeding. And Sam's like, well, how do you know that? And he's like, I remember Dad told me. It's like, well, why don't I remember this? Like, I don't know.
Whatever, college boy.
You were a kid. Whatever. So in Sam's research, he also reveals that they take on human form when they're not hunting. And usually like an old woman. So that's kind of where witches as old crones could have come from. And Dean's like, aha! That old lady at the hospital. She had an upside down crucifix. Which at first he was like, I saw this old lady at the hospital. So, really?
Really?
You saw an old person at a hospital? Wow.
Quite the discovery there, Dean.
She had an upside down crucifix, jerk. So they go to the hospital, and they both got their guns out. They're gonna like cat this old lady, and she's just sitting there, just, who is that? What's going on? Like, scares the crap out of Dean.
Proverbial red herring.
And then Sam's like, "Oh no, we're just with maintenance. I'm sorry, we thought you were asleep." Like, yeah, I was sleeping with my peepers open. And what? Somebody fix that crucifix. I asked 4 times already. And then Dean just kind of, and it's like, how much do these people not care that they couldn't flick an upside down? Why was it upside down in the first place?
How did it end up there? Like, did some, like, her grandkid come in and, like, flip it upside down as a prank or something?
Or maybe it was Heidecker.
Well, maybe it was Heidecker. No, can't stand this.
I don't know. But she had to ask 4 times and nobody did anything.
Yeah.
Like, around this time, we get some more foreshadowing over at the motel, and we get another kid being attacked. So, Michael's little brother, Asher.
Yep.
So Sam and Dean come back to the motel. Sam's still laughing about the old lady freak out and whatnot. They see Michael kind of sitting there upset. So Dean's like, "Hey, what's going on?" Finds out, oh, his brother had to go to the hospital, pneumonia. It was his fault. He should have latched the window, and all this. So Dean's relating, because we'll learn a little bit more about that here in a bit. But so he's helping out. He volunteers to drive Joanna to the hospital because she's in no condition to be driving and everything. So while Dean is at the hospital and everything, he calls and is talking to Sam. And Sam's been doing some research and finds out that, it was at the town that they were at back when they were kids. And, it's what their dad was hunting and everything. But then he found other attacks, like every 15 to 20 years or so, this thing attacks some town. It's like a mobile Pennywise.
Yeah.
Kind of, every couple of years it shows back up. And Sam notes it's hit the towns of Ogdenville, Brockway, and North Haverbrook, which are notable because those 3 towns have also been infected by Lyle Lanley, I believe, who went around selling towns crappy monorails before he then went to Springfield and sold them a crappy monorail with a jazzy song to go along with it. So just like a fun little
Easter egg there.
And so as he's going back, like, it goes back into like the 1890s, and Sam finds an article from like 1893, and there's Dr. Heidecker. So they now have a suspect, and so Dean ends up like talking to Heidecker again, and like just kind of like, yeah, and Sam's like, I'm surprised you didn't shoot him right there. And he's like, I'm not going to open fire in a pediatrics hospital. Also, I was unarmed, which is probably good, because I would have. And
oh, Han Solo.
Yeah. So it's in this moment, basically Dean knows, like, hey, he's going to come after the brother. Like, I don't want to, but we need to use Michael as bait. Sam's still like, something's going on. Like, what is it you're not telling me?
Yeah.
Like, and so we get another flashback as Dean talks about how basically back when they were kids and, their dad was hunting this thing, Dean's been cooped up in this motel for 3 days and, like, just wanted some fresh air. So even though John told him to not leave, he's a kid. Yeah. Kids do things.
Rebel.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. So he goes out for some fresh air, play some video games, whatever. Comes back into the motel room, and as he comes back in, he hears something going on from, like, the bedroom area of the motel room. And so kind of creeps his way over and opens the door, and the Striga is attacking Sam. And so he, like, reaches for the shotgun, picks it up, and then before he can do anything, John Batman's in.
Yep.
And
Dean comes by it honestly enough, apparently.
He's just kind of, get out of the way, and he shoots it, which it runs and jumps out the window. And John makes sure that Sam's okay and finds out that Dean had left for a minute, and he's not happy about that.
Yeah.
And so it's still eating up Dean, because he's blaming himself, and like all of the kids that have been hurt since then are kind of his fault because he should have just listened and all that. And John took Sam and Dean to a safe house, and then by the time he came back, like, he couldn't find it. So this is presumably the same thing.
Yeah.
So
unfinished business.
yeah. So they reluctantly talk to Michael, and he's not having it at first.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, I'm gonna call the cops, you crazies. But then as they talk to him, like, he saw it when it attacked his brother, but he's like, I thought I was just having a nightmare. And at first he's like, no, I don't want to do it. But then he shows back up, and he's like, he relates to Dean as an older brother, and he was like, you know, you do anything to protect your little brother? Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
So I would too. So they get it all set up, you know, they got a camera to watch in, whatever. Dean goes over the plan, like, you know, when we come in, you're going to roll off the bed, and you know, we're going to shoot this thing with, well, he doesn't go into the details with Michael, but it's consecrated wrought iron rounds, which is what they learned from John will kill this, apparently. And you know, Michael's concerned, like, well, what if you shoot me? And he's like, we won't, we're good shots, we're going to make sure you're clear before we fire. And he's like, have you ever heard a gunshot before? And he's like, you mean like in the movies? He's like, well, it's going to be a little bit louder, so I want you to stay down, get under the bed, cover your ears, don't come out until we say it's okay. And so they're, you know, they're sitting and watching, and then
Which I think is actually a really nice touch, that they don't just like, and it shows a little bit of compassion with the brothers, that they actually take the time to even talk to this you know, child that's about to go through this horrendous experience. I mean, really.
Right.
And they take the time to, you know, talk to him about, like, just so you know, the gunshots are going to be a lot louder than what you're expecting. And they're talking him through that, because, you know, most of us think, like, if you've never fired a gun before, you kind of equate gunshots to movies, whether you realize it or not. And that first time that gun goes off right by you, it's like, that is not what I was anticipating in any way, shape, or form. And I don't know, I love that little touch that they give in the episode.
Also, side note, just because I like to go back to the previous episodes and talk about what I messed up, and because I write notes a lot when I'm watching, so I'll look down and I'll miss things. And so I was giving them a hard time for the flammability of the house in the Hell House episode. There's a scene with Dean with, like, lighter fluid spraying it all over the house. Of course it's super flammable. I need to stop questioning Supernatural when they do things. They're on top of it more than you'd think.
Yeah.
They make their mistakes, but a lot of the times, like, I need to be more open to giving them the benefit of the doubt. Anyways, so they get that all set up, and you know, they're watching the cameras and everything, and we get some more foreshadowing as it starts creeping in, but they gotta wait until it's feeding, or getting ready to feed. So they're waiting until, like, the last minute. They bust in, they have Michael roll off the bed, and then they open fire, and it's down for the count. It's dead, but it's not.
But it's not.
So it attacks, and it starts attacking Sam again. And then this time, Dean gets it. And so, you know, headshot, hits down, and then Dean makes sure it's down.
Down for the count.
And, you know, we get, like, the next day, like, the kids are getting better. Dr. Heidecker wasn't in for some reason. Like, don't know what that's all about. Maybe he was sick. Maybe he caught whatever the kids had. Impending death.
Yeah.
Is what they had, and that's what Heidecker got.
His is a little less impending death and more of just death.
Well, he caught it really quickly.
Yeah, it was a very, very quick impending death.
Anyways, and so things are all good, and, you know, Joanna takes Michael to go visit Ash in the hospital, and everything's cool, and Sam's a little sad, I guess, that they had to reveal to Michael that, like, there are things in the dark that, you know, sometimes nightmares are real, type of thing. And he's just like, you know, I wish, like, we didn't have to, like, take that innocence from him. And he's like, you know, I kind of almost wish that, like, I could have had that innocence. And Dean's like, if it's any consolation, I'm like, I do too. And so that's kind of
a bittersweet sweet note on the episode.
I'm looking at my notes. I'm like, do not there anymore. Oh, that's doctor. That's an R. Doctor not there anymore. Another thing, which, again, I'm going to give Supernatural the benefit of the doubt. But one thing that just kind of cracked me up is before Joanna leaves with Michael, she asks it, if anything happened. He was like, no, nothing much. I was like, isn't there going to be like bullet holes all throughout his room because they opened fire? But again, I'm not going to question it, because each time I question it, like, I'm going to go back to like get the footage, and there's going to be like a scene that I looked down during where they were like fixing stuff in the room. And
yeah. Well, it also kind of makes me wonder if iron expands a lot more in the body, potentially. Or maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I'm not sure what the ballistics would look like for iron being fired out of a 45. But yeah, that could be it too. It just never actually left the Striga's body.
Possibly.
Unless they missed, which, I mean, also, they may have missed a couple of times.
I think they hit it each time.
Because
they have like they were like 6 feet away.
That's true too. Okay, fair point.
So, anyways, that's our episode. So, tell me about this monster.
So the Striga is, best words that I can find for it is a vampire witch in Albanian mythology, which is a witch pyre. Exactly. So it is, no one is really born a Striga. You become a Striga through your thoughts. Oftentimes it's a woman who's overcome with envy, or that they undergo a special ritual in order to become a Striga, which is very similar to if you're wanting to become a witch in old Eastern European mythology.
Okay.
You're not necessarily born a witch. You make a pact with the devil to become a witch. The difference is that a Striga will feed on the blood of sleeping individuals, specifically children. So rather than doing what it was doing, which was like taking out the soul, it was instead feeding on the blood of children and making them incredibly sick. And if they were not cured of this sickness, then they would inevitably die. Now, the only person that could cure that sickness, however, was the Striga herself or himself. Really, the Striga is generally seen as a woman. A male Striga would be called a Strigun or a Strigan.
And that just sounded funny.
Yeah. But generally speaking, in mythology, they were like, they were very much like the woman that they initially suspected was going to be a Striga. It's an elderly woman. They don't really change form like you see in the episode where Dr. Heidecker is able to change his form to become the Striga versus then becoming a human. But rather, they maintain their forms and blend in with society and are able to give what's called the evil eye to people, which is a curse.
Evil eye.
To the point where you wanted to make sure, because they would more often than not try and give it to beautiful young women, beautiful young men, and babies. And so if you were going to enter a conversation involving, like, if you wanted to come over and see your neighbor's baby, you would have to say a specific phrase, generally one of, and so Allah wills, and then you would basically boop it on the nose. And that was showing a sign of goodwill, that I am not here to cause you harm. I am not a Striga. I'm here to give you blessings, essentially.
Not a Striga.
It's not a Striga. It's not a Tulpa. It's not a Striga. What is it?
Get to the chopper.
Get to the chopper. So, Supernatural got pretty close with, comparing what it was. It's essentially some sort of kind of witchy creature that's draining the life force out of children and making them very, very ill. Generally speaking, I didn't go into this, but the way that a Striga will actually have to cure the sickness that it's given to children is by spitting in their mouths.
Yeah.
So yeah, not a super great cure, but well, here we are.
if it cures it, then it is a super great cure.
Yeah, that's okay. Fair point.
Not an ideal way to receive a cure.
Yeah, that's true. It could be worse. Could be a suppository. But anyway, so how do you kill a Striga?
Consecrated wrought iron rounds.
In Supernatural, yes. In folklore, no.
Oh.
Generally speaking, and we'll get to this when we get to the episode talking about cold iron or wrought iron, which we will have coming up here in a couple of episodes. We'll get into why that wouldn't have worked on a Striga. A Striga has a couple of different ways to actually be killed. One of the easier ones is because you've got these creatures that are trying to blend in with society, is if you take a cross made out of pig bone and then stake it into the ground outside of a church on Easter Sunday, it will actually cause the Striga to be trapped inside the church and make the threshold of the church deadly. So if it's trying to blend in with society, trying to blend in, not be seen as a Striga, then all that you would have to do is on Easter Sunday, if you suspect your neighbor's a Striga, make a cross out of pig bone, stick it into the ground, and now the minute the Striga will know that it is going to be deadly, but it will vainly try and step over the threshold of the church and then die. So if you suspect your neighbor's a Striga, making your children sick, and you do that, and they're able to walk over the threshold, then they're not the Striga in question. Another way...
now have an idea for what I'm going to do this Easter Sunday.
Another way to combat the Striga in Christian faith, you would put a cross inside of holy water, and then you would use that on the Striga, and that would be fatal to the Striga. In the Islamic faith, if you...
That one sounds a lot easier.
Yep. In the
you got one day a year to maybe make this work.
Yeah.
If they go to church.
Yeah, the other one just like dump and then splash, and it's like, oh, okay, we're good. The other one is in the Quran faith. The Islamic faith is you read from the Quran. As you read passages from the Quran, they are unable to hold up to that, and they will end up dying from then as well. There was also some folk tale that you could make a charm that would protect you and your children from Striga. It was this idea that Edith Durham, who is an anthropologist of Albanian folklore, noted that in some of the folklore, they would say that after feeding on the blood of children, the Striga would then disappear into the woods and regurgitate the blood into the woods. If you are able to find this regurgitation of blood, if you dump a coin in there and then pull it back out, that would actually be as a talisman to protect you forever from Striga. So if you're walking along in the woods, yeah. So you're like walking through the woods maybe at night, or like you're on a hunt and you suddenly just see this giant pool of blood with nothing nearby, and you just dunk a coin in there, you could very easily now have protection from Striga for the rest of your life.
You know, so far my risk has not been that great of running into one. I think I'll pass the bloody vomit.
Good. Yep. They're like blood-sucking birds, apparently. But now Striga have not only made an appearance just within Supernatural and Albanian folklore, we actually got to see another take on the Striga in more modern day times with the Witcher TV series, as well as the video game series and the book series. And in this one, a Striga is very vulnerable to silver. It's essentially a unborn child that has been cursed while still in the womb. The mother dies, and this creature still continues to grow, and is now in the books I believe 14-year-old girl, but does not look like a 14-year-old girl. It's described as being extremely barrel-chested and eating, and very stout, with red hair and a large gaping mouth in which to eat its victims. Very vulnerable to silver, as well as there's a couple of different rituals that you can go through that will actually cure a Striga from their Striganism.
Striganism?
So to kind of just see how it's broken off and what a Striga is going to mean to different people, depending on whether it's some kind of man-eating monster, whether it's a vampire witch, or in this case with Supernatural, we get something that's a little bit little bit of the Albanian folklore, but they got to change it around just a little bit for it. And we got to see cold iron start getting used again in other ways. It works on various other mythological creatures, but it probably wouldn't work on a mythological Striga, but we'll get into that in a later episode. Okay. But overall, good old Striga.
And a never-ending roundabout.
And a never-ending roundabout we were just stuck at. So what do we have on the plate for next episode, next week?
Next time we are going to be looking at haunted paintings.
And this is where we get to start looking at the cold iron.
Oh.
It was sooner than I thought, even.
Excellent. Quick turnaround.
Quick turnaround, but a slow roundabout.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I guess we'll see everyone next week.
Yeah, well, I guess until then, stay safe, buckle up, and
we got work to do.